Welcome back to Lessons from the Fall. Today I want to talk about something I'm seeing more and more of, not just in theory, but in real deals, real conversations, and real captive moments. Adelaide, South Australia. Because for a long time, Adelaide was overlooked. It wasn't Sydney, it wasn't Melbourne. It didn't attract the same level of attention, the same level of capital, or the same level of urgency. But that's changing. And it's not changing slowly. It's changing in a very real, very deliberate way. What I'm seeing right now is a shift. Developers are looking here, interstate investors are looking here, and more importantly, overseas capital is starting to take Adelaide seriously. Now, the question is, why? Because capital doesn't move randomly. It moves with purpose. It looks for stability, yield, opportunity, and positioning. And Adelaide is starting to tick all those boxes. Let's start with something recent. Rundle Place, right here in the heart of Adelaide, being brought to the market with a guide of around 220 million. Now, that's not just a local transaction. That's institutional grade real estate. That's the type of asset that attracts serious capital. And when you look at the fundamentals of that asset, over 90% occupancy, major tenants like Apple, Lululemon, RM Williams and Coles, over 220 million in annual sales, around 8.5 million visitors a year. That's not a struggling market, that's a performing one. And what's interesting is the commentary around it. There's a clear statement being made. There is more capital looking for exposure to assets like this than there are assets available. That's important because when demand for asset outweighs supply, prices stabilise, confidence builds and investors move. Now, take that and zoom out because this isn't just one deal. Across Australia, we're seeing large-scale retail and commercial transactions happening again. Funds being raised, institutions deploying capital. But what difference is there when capital starts looking around? Because Sydney and Melbourne, while still dominant, have become expensive, competitive, compressed in terms of yield. So investors start asking different questions. Where else can we deploy capital effectively? And that's where Adelaide comes in. Because Adelaide offers something that's becoming harder to find elsewhere. Relative value, stronger yields, lower entry points, and a market that hasn't been overdeveloped. And for developers, that matters because development isn't just about building, it's about feasibility, margins, exit strategies. If your costs are lower, your competition is less aggressive. If your exit yields are still attractive, your project makes more sense. And that's why we're seeing more developers focus on South Australia. Now let's talk about something even more important, the funding side, something I get excited about. Because none of this happens without capital, especially capital from Renown Lending. And this is where I'm seeing a significant shift. We're seeing overseas investors calling us up. They're no longer looking at just buying assets. They're backing lenders like us. They're backing the platforms. They're looking to deploy capital through structured lending. And we have great lawyers who help them with that. Because lending gives them exposure without needing to manage the asset directly. And that's where businesses like Renown come in. Because we sit between capital and opportunity. We see the deals. We structure the funding. We understand the risk. And what we're seeing is clear. More international capital is looking for exposure to the Australian-backed property. And more importantly, they want that backing to be amazing. And we're those amazing people. They're also saying Adelaide is becoming a key part of the conversation when it comes to lending. Now, why? Because it offers a combination of stability, transparency, and opportunity. Compared to the global markets, Australia is still seen as safe, legally structured, and well regulated. And within Australia, Adelaide is seen as an underpriced relative to its potential. So when you combine global uncertainty, capital looking for yield, and a market like Adelaide that's still developing, you get momentum. And with that momentum, you see great movement. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't just about hype. This is about observation. From real conversation, real deals, real capital flows. Adelaide is not trying to compete with Sydney. It doesn't need to. It's positioned itself differently as a market that offers better entry points, stronger yields, and less volatility. And for the right investor, that's exactly what they're looking for. But here's the key. Not everyone will see this shift because it's not always obvious in headlines. It's seen in behaviour. It's who's asking questions. It's who's looking at deals. It's where capital is starting to flow. And from where I sit, the flow is increasing. So the question isn't, is Adelaide a good market? The question is, do you understand why capital is moving there? Because once you understand that, you see opportunity differently. This is lessons from the fall, and sometimes the biggest opportunities aren't where everyone is looking. They're where the smart movie is starting to move. Have a good day.